King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at kingcomics.ca, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby. Hey, what is going on, everybody? I am Maximus Rex, and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today, following our theme of comics, graphic novels that I encountered as a kid growing up, which inspired and led me to want to become eventually a comic book artist slash illustrator slash cartoonist. This is one of them. We're going in chronological order. So we've seen a couple of old Batman issues from the 80s. And then we saw kind of a read-along Transformers book that I had as a kid that I really enjoyed. Now we're looking at something from, as some people say, across the pond, from Europe. And the most glaring thing here that you've probably noticed is that it is in another language, more specifically French. So I currently live in Montreal, but I'm from the province of Quebec. My first language is French. English I learned very early on at school and all kind of throughout my life. But as a kid, I had access to both languages, also when it came to comics and graphic novels as well. So, I had American comic books, Archie comic books and stuff, and I had European albums in French. So this is one of those. Archie was also in French, so both languages there. So, not sure this has been covered really here in North America because of that, because it's a French language comic book, but hopefully we can remedy that, go through it. The creative team is here on the cover. So the artist, Uderzo, the text, so I assume that's more like scripts and stuff by Goscinny. So Uderzo, I feel, is doing the plotting. So they're the original team, and I have the collection basically of the original albums in double volumes, 2 albums in one, just from that original team. Eventually, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I could be, but the artist Uderzo passed away first, and from that point on, I didn't really follow Astérix and Obélix. And the book kind of has, an intro page that we'll go through, so that'll kind of give you the gist of what's going on. As long as you know the basic premise, then from then on, each story kind of is its own adventure, right? But obviously there's continuity that keeps going on throughout those albums. Let's have a look inside. So even here, they kind of give you, in like most of these albums have these, okay? So this already gives you information. So what he's saying is these Romans are crazy while he's hitting one. And as you can see, like, great cartooning throughout. Just going to say that right away. But, the guy gets punched out of his, I'm not going to call them boots, but sandals, I guess. Roman sandals. And you can see his feet just as he's going out of frame. Obviously very clever to have the rest of the body out of there. Not too much to draw. And it heightens the sense of how fast and how quick he's being thrown up there. But because they're constantly fighting the Romans, this is kind of to tell you that, right? Here we have Obélix, who says, I feel a little weak here. Panoramix, which is their druid, right? Who makes the magic potion, which we'll talk about. No, Obélix, you can't have any because basically, you fell into it when you were a kid. So basically, Obélix, what you need to know is that you need to know that this guy, Panoramix, produces a magic potion for this small group, okay, of Gaulois village, okay? So you can see their little village over here, which are basically the ancestors of the French in France, right? Okay, so they're surrounded by the Romans, who at that period, that's, the intro page basically explains that, Rome has taken over most of what we now know as like Western Europe, except for this little village, right? And that's these guys that we saw, that we're going to see again here, right? So again, the druid makes a magic potion that when, this little village, these inhabitants of this village, when they drink it, gives them, basically like superpowers for, a short period of time. Except, of course, for Obélix, as was mentioned, he fell into it as a kid, and he's just, he has that strength permanently. And you have some of the other characters here that you'll meet. They have kind of a bard, right? And he sings and he's horrible. I love the visual representation of those bad notes. You know, that works totally. Very nice graphic tool there. And yeah, there's a ongoing gag that anytime he starts singing, they somehow shut him up or get him to stop playing and singing. And then you have their leader, who you'll see too, who's part kind of the basic plot, who is carried around on a shield here, as is Gaulois tradition. Okay, so Gaulois, again, just basically the ancestors of the French, resisting, the conquest of Rome that's all around them. So it starts in Rome. I get a kick out of this, Le Cirque Maxime, so the Circus Maximus. My name's Maximus, also in French, just as it's written here, Maxime. So, setting, right? Where's this happening? Rome. Great establishing shot. Takes a while to draw this. All the backgrounds you'll see are, like, I would say fairly realistic. Not saying he's using the grid and perspective all the time. Seems to be here, right? Could be using some photo reference, some stats and stuff as well. That's possible. But the backgrounds are always fairly precise and realistic. And the characters are very kind of kinetic and cartoony. So, it's interesting. And sometimes, he'll warp and change things as needed. But it's, again, very cartoony, very dynamic. I like these little elements, when he gets angry. And he's got these steaming farts coming out of his head. They look like steaming farts to me. So basically they're going, the leader of the Gaulois has brought along Astérix and Obélix because his wife is bringing him to Lutèce, which is the ancestor of Paris, to visit her brother, who's a very successful man in the big city. And, they're kind of portrayed in here as the hicks from the country, right? So that's kind of the dynamic going on there. So obviously the boss here, the leader, doesn't really like his brother-in-law. So he's kind of, begrudgingly going there. So here's the brother-in-law, super happy to see his sister. Already going at it. I'm not going to go through the dialogue, but, the body language, you see he's angry here. He's being kind of a jerk. Here they're being, passive-aggressive, sarcastic. So again, the art really portrays what they're feeling and the emotions in the body language really well. And again, the backgrounds are just, super solid, as you can see. So obviously, Step Bro is trying to put everything on, tell him how successful he is, how amazing he is. And they're drinking and they're drinking. And as you can tell, eventually they get drunk. And, he's getting tired of this guy's ego. So he suggests that he's going to be able to have some sort of meal. They like to cook wild boar, right? That's what they eat. So a dish of wild boar, ragu, but that's going to have been spiced or herbed with the laurels of Caesar's crown. That's basically what he's saying here when he's yelling it out. He's like, this ragu will be made with the laurels of Caesar's actual crown. So that's why you're getting the reaction from Astérix here. It's like, what? So Obélix is drunk. He's reinforcing the idea that they're going to get it. And he's getting kind of insulted. And he's like, yeah, well, okay, I'll take you up on this. And I expect to eat, that meal flavored with the laurels from Caesar's crown. Wife not happy, obviously. They're leaving during the night. Probably still drunk. Clearly still drunk. And that's how we find them back in Rome, right? It was kind of like a little flashback as to why they're in Rome. So what happens here is they're trying to figure out how to get to the laurels or close to Caesar. More drunkenness here. So this is the example of stuff like, I don't think I've seen much drunkenness in a Marvel comic, or a DC comic that are for kids. And here, this comic's clearly for kids, but they still can have a fairly realistic depiction of someone getting drunk. The fact that, I'm sure when you're a kid, everyone's seen an uncle, get a little tipsy or a little drunk and funny. It is part of life. So to shy away from it, maybe part of the comics code at that time in the comics I read as a kid from the Marvel DC side, kind of the American comics. But you know, the Europeans didn't have any kind of restrictions like that. And again, I just find their depiction of, even though this is fairly historic, like I said, the characters are cartoony, a fairly sober representation again of the good and the bad of history and what was going on back then. Again, I marvel at these backgrounds because they're super well done, really realistic, fairly clean, you know, fits with the style. So they figure out they got to be sold to Caesar as slaves, right? So again, not shying away from the fact that, you know, there's been a slave market on Earth. I mean, for thousands of years. There still is today, whether we want to, you know, kind of look at that or not. And we're not going to do that today. But, you know, you have to be aware, I would hope, of this, you know, still going on today. So they think they should be sold as, you know, super high-end slaves. And this guy doesn't agree, but eventually, because they're so strong, he's like, well, give it a chance, you know. And this guy's being kind of a jerk, you know. He's like the perfect slave. He's all muscular and stuff, and, you know, buff. I like this sequence is very nice because I believe most of these are references to classic works of art, right? The guy throwing the discus, the thinker, right? Some of them escape me. This one I know is something, I don't know its name. Just the fact that, you know, Astérix is getting caught up in the rope here. I would like to know what the original is there. It's just not coming to me right now. And just the dynamic effect here of Astérix punching him once he's fed up enough with him, you know, being such a jerk. This whole panel is great. All the energy in it, you know, this extra kind of like somewhat almost manga-ish, you know what I mean? Like this here, like I've never done it to that extreme, you know, like you gotta have balls to do that. And I mean, I wish I could, but I mean, eventually I'd like to get to that. I try crazy stuff sometimes, but this is like, I just love all this dynamic lines. They all work. His fist coming around the point of impact, you know. This guy being swept off his feet, right? The little dust wind, him jumping up here, leaving a bit of dust because he's going so fast. All of that, super effective. That's like a great panel. So this guy wants to get rid of them because they're causing too much trouble. They destroy the whole thing, and eventually this guy shows up, and he wants to buy them as slaves, right? So they somehow think that they're going to Caesar's place, right? But he's not Caesar. He's a rich guy, as you can tell from his domain and stuff, and the interior. Again, backgrounds are amazing. Yeah, he's like, you think you're at Caesar's place? He's like, no, this is my place, right? So they think they kind of got their way into Caesar's palace, and that is not the case. Obviously, Caesar's palace thousands of years ago, not the one in Las Vegas. So you got the leader of the slaves here who now has to kind of break these guys in, tell them what to do, right? So they're like, they want them to cook a meal for them, right? They've never cooked, these two guys. That's not what they do in the village, right? So they just decide to kind of throw everything in there. Chicken. I can't identify all these elements. Yeah, there's the chicken again. Just kind of throw everything in there, right? And clearly from the images, it doesn't look like it smells very good. So slave leader comes on in. He's going to test it. He has to, right? So they're not poisoning him. And it's just the cartoony goodness of this part here, the different colors and stuff. They're just having fun here, clearly. It's a same drawing a few times, different colors. From a technical point of view, you're getting through a lot of work pretty quickly here. I just love this, like the up and down, you know, again, the little steam farts, I guess is what I'd call them. But like, I love all this stuff here. I really need to work more of that into my stuff. So yeah, his mouth's on fire. This is what he looks like at the end of it. And he's like, this is perfect. They're going to kill you, you know. So I'm going to feed them this, and after that, they're going to get rid of you guys because he really doesn't like them. Slave competition, I guess. So they bring it, and this is like, I think it's his son. Pretty sure it's his son. He's always drunk, right? He's always coming back. He's always, not drunk, sorry, but hungover. So he's like, you know, you're gonna eat this. Like, I don't want any. He's like, you're gonna eat this. It was prepared by the Gaulois, blah blah blah, and they're from Typhus, or Typhus was like the you know, the high end slave trader. So they're high end slaves, right? So you better eat it. So he eats it. Same reaction. I like that they just decided to, you know, let's, you know, you get what's going on here. Just it keeps going for a while. Plotting, he knows, you know, or he thinks he knows that these guys are in trouble. So the hungover guy comes in. He's like, I love you. Give me a hug. You know, he's like, you've cured me of my, you know, hangovers now, so I can drink as much as I want. And just, you know, next day you're going to prepare this for me and I'm going to be all right. So it's backfired on them once again because they want to get out of there, right? They want to get to Caesar. So it's nighttime. So they decide, start making a bunch of noise, and they get up. What is going on? And they're like, well, yeah, this is, you know, one of our traditions. We get up at night and every few hours and we play our percussion pieces, right? So then, you know, the son who's drunk comes in late at night and he's into it. So they continue partying, you know, and they continue getting dancers and stuff, is what's mentioned here. And they start clanging and clanging themselves. So then these two guys who started all have to now suffer through it. Everything they kind of, you know, try to do, they get sabotaged because the family that bought them as slaves really enjoy what seems to them like traditional Gaulois activities. So everyone's hungover. He leaves, scheming again. So for some reason, the hangover, this guy's going to send Astérix and Obélix as representatives at Caesar's palace, right? Because he can't go because of the hangover. That's what happens here. And they're on their way. And as you can see, slave leader still scheming. So something's up. Here they are marching to Caesar's palace. In they go, only to be welcomed by a bunch of Roman soldiers, right? And of course, these Roman soldiers don't know about the Gaulois and their strength. So they're told to bring them along to the dungeons. And what they are saying is that basically they're closer than ever to Caesar's laurels, right? So they're just going to hang tight and come out during the night. As you can see, remember, Obélix has the strength permanently, so knocks off the lock, smacks the Romans. As I said, a common activity introduced in those beginning pages. It's a trope that comes back, you know, throughout the whole series. They're doing it all the way throughout here. I like this as a storytelling device. That's pretty clever. You know, that you see them started off, you see a soldier with what's happened before. You pretty much know what's happening here, right? Piff puff, French sound effects, which mean, you know, bam paf, basically. This guy's been smacked, and on they go, smacking guards along the way, right? Even hits a big one here. He says this one's pretty big. So they're looking for the laurels, basically, all across and through the palace. So this guy, you know, got smacked. Is like, no, they're, you know, they left and they popped out. And he's like, what's going on here? And they're back in there. So he's like, what? They're all very confused, starting to think they're magical. They're gods. So basically they need to go in front of a tribunal. So here they're to be judged. I mean, I'm not going to go through all of this. Basically, they're judged and they are said to be eaten at the Circus Maximus by the lions, basically. So their rationale here to get here, I believe, is once again, Caesar's going to be there, so they want to get closer to the laurels once again. Caesar wasn't at the palace. So once they've been sent off to the lions, unfortunately the lions have already eaten all the other Christians and all the other lions that were sacrificed there. So not much fight left there. Right at the circus, as you can see here. Some brigands trying to attack them here while they're sleeping on the streets of Rome. They follow them around, kind of join their ranks for a little bit there. This guy's drunk and singing about Caesar. A lot of convoluted ways to basically get them close to, once again, the laurels, the crown laurels of Caesar. So they come into this inn. And lo and behold, who's here kind of sleeping it off, slightly drunk? But the head slave who double-crossed him earlier, sent him off to the tribunal. So he's obviously afraid. Death leave both of these guys. So moving on, we find out that basically the top slave, okay, you can see the scene here during the parade that's going to happen with Caesar in it. The top slave gets to drop the laurel crown on Caesar's head. So Astérix, very excited. That's great. You owe us one. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to get us those laurels, right? And he convinces him. He has no choice, basically. So this is where they get it. And what's funny is that, I got to say for the gag, so you understand, he's asking them if they have any fennel. And Astérix is saying basically they're going to make another crown out of fennel and switch it, and then that's what the head slave is going to put on Caesar's head. Love the scene here. Love the way it says, just in the early morning. So the kind of pointyism, the dots and stuff, and nowhere else in the comic, but that they used here really kind of gives it that murky, kind of steamy, early morning mist look, right? I think it really works well here, and it's just great stuff. I like the color choice too, very subdued, right? So they get the crown of laurels, they switch it, they give him the fennel crown. And as he's here with Caesar, as you can see, really nervous, giving off those I like that as well, the graphic visual of those tears kind of coming off, beads of sweat, I guess. And he's got the fennel crown, and as he's setting it down, his arm shaking as he's setting it down on Caesar's head. Caesar in his thought balloon says, strange, I have the sudden urge to grill some fish. So anyone out there who cooks a little bit, I guess fennel is a popular herb to put with your fish. So there's that joke there that I do think is kind of funny, even if no one else does. And then we get the last page, finally, back to the Gaulois village. Step Bros there. So leader of the Gaulois, now he's kind of the one who's proud and slightly egotistical here. So how is the, ragu flavored with the laurels of Caesar? So he starts critiquing once again, and he's just about had enough. He's brought him the laurels of Caesar, and he's still not happy, not satisfied. So, as they do with the Romans, they do with this guy. And traditionally, each episode ends with this kind of scene here, oftentimes with the bard tied up or somehow cut off from being able to sing or play his lyre. And in this case, well, he after being hit over here, he's landed next to him, and he asks him, so you sing as well, assuming that he sings badly, and that's why he's been punched and sent over here. And again, this is the traditional scene where they're eating the wild boar. Almost every episode pretty much ends with a scene similar to this, and that is basically it for this story here. Once again, une aventure d'Astérix le Gaulois, les lauriers de César, Caesar's laurels, I guess basically is how you would translate that. Thank you for checking this out, and I will see you next time with the next episode of Big Baby Reviews. Have a great day.